Join me in the responsive reading, Romans chapter 12, verses 9 through 21. Love must be sincere, hate what is evil, cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves.
Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor, serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer.
Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Practice hospitality.
Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn.
Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited.
Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone.
Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, "It is mine to avenge, I will repay," says the Lord.
On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head.
Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good.
And now, I believe it's time for special music.
I just don't feel it this morning. My good buddy Joe is leaving, and it's just, oh, with the mic, yeah. My good buddy Joe is leaving, and I just don't feel like nothing hits me this morning. I don't feel real musical. I like to win anything this morning, you know.
Wait a minute. Stop.
What?
You do this.
What?
Joe's right here. She's right there.
Yeah.
Okay, so
She's gone, you know.
she's not going. She's just going.
No, I'm not going. Yeah, I get that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's lift your spirit and wait. Okay, Gene's in.
In what?
And what we're gonna do. Watch. Turn around. Come on.
We'll give it a shot.
Okay.
Why not?
All right, we'll give it a shot.
Why not?
Okay. Who's on? Okay.
Woke up this morning, saw a world of trouble, and I thought, how do you ever get so far down? And how am I never gonna turn around? So I turned my eyes to heaven. I thought, God, why don't you do something?
Do something.
Well, I just
Feel better? Okay.
I think we need an applause for that one. Amen. Okay, it's time to listen to Matthew chapter 16, verses 21 to 28. From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and on the third day be raised to life. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. "Never, Lord," he said, "this shall never happen to you." Jesus turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? For the Son of Man is going to come in his Father's glory with the angels, and then he will reward each person according to what they have done. Truly I tell you, some who are standing here will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." May God add God's blessing to that reading from his holy word. Amen. So when I said that there were flamingos at Cedar Creek Park, I thought maybe they had followed us back from Hilton Head. But we actually didn't see any flamingos on Hilton Head. We saw lots of birds. We had a good time. So I've already been back for a week, so I feel like I can't say I'm just coming off island time. Can't say that, but we did get to enjoy island time for a few days. And for me, that meant starting the day with a walk on the beach or a walk on the bike path. There's so many bike paths on Hilton Head. And the weather was good, and I would go on a walk, and then I'd settle down by the pool to read my books for a few hours, and it was great. And the food was good, and we went to a couple good restaurants, and I had local fish every night. You can't get better than that. And I'll tell you, we were eating dinner by the pool. There was this little restaurant by the pool one night, which is right off the beach, when a woman came in and said she'd just been stung by a jellyfish on her arm, and she was looking for some vinegar to put on the jellyfish stings. And of course, I looked it up. And vinegar, you are supposed to put vinegar on jellyfish stings. I didn't know that. So they found some help for her. We kept eating, but you know, my thoughts soon turned to how quickly things can go wrong sometimes. Like jellyfish stings, Sammy and Cindy are laughing, cars breaking down, hurricanes, wildfires. I'm sure everybody here could add 5 more things. So, have you ever woken up in the morning and you've got a smile on your face, you're ready to meet the day, and then by lunchtime, oh, you're as crabby as can be. Oh my gosh. So our moods, they can flip-flop in a second, right? Smooth sailing one day, sunny weather, and then you got a hurricane. In a very short time, here comes that hurricane. So that's kind of what happened to Peter that day, that story we just read about in Matthew. So if I were to read a couple verses before where we started, you'll see that Jesus has just told Peter, guess what he's just told Peter? He said, "Peter, you are the rock. You are the rock, and I'm going to build my church on you. Hooray!" But now just a little while later, I don't know, maybe a couple hours, I don't know how long, Jesus says, "Peter, you're a stumbling block, and maybe you're even the devil himself." Whoa, we think, wait a minute, Jesus. Make up your mind. Which one is it? Is he the rock? Is he the devil? Is he a stumbling block? What is he? Well, of course, it's all of these, right? It's all of these. Peter was just trying to be a nice guy. He just wanted to get Jesus off the hook and say, Jesus, we don't want anything bad to happen to you, right? Nobody wants to see their friends suffer. On the other hand, Jesus sees Peter as standing in the way of the path that he is meant to walk, right? Jesus doesn't want to be tempted away from that path. So he says, get behind me, Satan. So some of us, we want to ask, well, why did Jesus have to walk that difficult path? And one way that helps me understand it is the idea that we don't ever want to see our children suffer. Nobody wants to see their children suffer. If our child gets hurt, we say to God, why can't it be me instead, right? So I've been reading this memoir by the author. Her name is Elizabeth Bird. She's written a lot of really good novels. But she wrote this memoir, and she writes about the day her daughter fell off the monkey bars and broke her arm. And they took her to the ER, they put a cast on her arm, and she was okay. But the next day, Mom wakes up, and she's lying in bed, and she says, she was lying in bed thinking, how am I going to take a shower with a cast on my arm? And then a second later, she was like, oh, wait a minute, it's not me, I don't have a cast on my arm. My daughter has the cast on her arm. That's how closely she was identifying with her daughter. So, do you find it reassuring to think about God this way? God identifies with us. The question was asked, God do something, right? God do something. And God says, well, yeah, I created love. And that's God identifying with all of us, right? There's so much pain in the world. So much pain in the world. It's too much to deal with sometimes. You don't want to even don't turn on the news. Because there's just too much out there. And yet, we keep on keeping on, right? We take up our cross, we follow. And it's a good thing we have passages like Romans 12. I love Romans 12. Hate what is evil, cling to what is good, be devoted to one another in love. That's 16 words right there, right? Could last us a lifetime. You could just take those 16 words, paste them on your refrigerator or whatever, and go for it, right? Yes. But as long as we remember that we can't do any of this with our own strength, right? It's just too hard. We can't just like, I'm going to try, I'm going to try, I'm going to try. We usually feel like we're not doing enough, right? So Paul writes, do what is right in the eyes of everyone. Yeah, right. Like, how am I supposed to do that? That's even just silly because you can't do that, right? We could be up all night thinking about how are we going to do right in the eyes of everybody. So I have this little story. I apologize if I've told it before, but it's about this guy who's trying to do the right thing, and he gets to the pearly gates, and St. Peter says, he looks up his record and he says, well, you didn't do anything particularly good, but neither did you do anything particularly bad. So I'll tell you what, if you can tell me one really good deed that you've done, I'll let you stay. And the man says, well, once I saw these shady-looking characters, and they were menacing this young woman. So I stopped my car, and I took out my tire iron. And I walked up to the guy who seemed to be the leader. I was really scared, but I gave him this shove, just this little shove. And I said, you leave that girl alone. And then I stared at all of them and I said, now get out of here or you'll have to answer to me. So St. Peter was really impressed and he said, well, when did this happen? And the guy said, oh, about 2 minutes ago. So do you feel like the world keeps beating you down? Like the world is made up of a bunch of shady characters, right? Do we ever want to take revenge sometimes, right? Complicated though. How do you take revenge on a wildfire? How do you take revenge on a hurricane or a jellyfish or a car engine or somebody in the news that you've never met, right? There are ways, if not exact, that are a step in the right direction. I think of taking better care of the earth. We can all do that. I credit Joe for inspiring me to try not to use plastic bags. So I got some of those mesh bags. Joe said, get some of those mesh bags. That's to put, you know, like when you go to the grocery store to put your vegetables in. So like little things like that, right? We can take care of the earth, do our own part. We can keep on loving each other. That's the theme, love in action, loving each other. We can tell that jellyfish, there's no need to sting, right? We can be friends. You don't have to sting us. So I heard this definition, I read this definition of life from Susan Lenski. She's a Bible study leader. She writes, life is like licking honey off a thorn bush. Think about that. Life is like licking honey off a thorn bush. I was like, ooh, I remembered that one. I'm not going to forget that one. Right? Oh, how sweet and wonderful the honey is, but oh, how painful those thorns are, right? And also, we wonder about how the Apostle Paul handles the revenge part of it. He tells us not to take revenge because we need to leave room for God's wrath. Oh boy. The wrath of God. Oh boy, we've got to handle that one. And then he tells us that if we help our enemies, what we're really doing is heaping burning coals on their heads. Boy, that's a nice thought. Like, yeah, should we really be heaping burning coals on our enemies' heads? I don't know about that. Well, let's be honest, sometimes we do want to heap burning coals on people's heads. Sometimes, not all the time, right? Somebody who has done something very wrong, someone who has made us angry, someone who's caused a lot of hurt and suffering. We're angry and we want to hurt them back, and that's human reaction, that's natural. Yet usually we keep ourselves in check. That's what it means to be mature adults. We keep ourselves in check. We don't dump those coals on their head. Maybe some cold water, how about that? More likely, we feel as if we're not doing enough to save the world, right? We have to work harder and harder. And still, these bad things keep happening. But don't worry, though, if you're saying, oh my, she's really getting us down today. We're getting to the good news right now. And it's an honor to Joe. Here's the good news. I'm going to share some words from Ann Weems, who is one of Joe's favorite persons, I think, yes. So Joe loves poems by Ann Weems, and there are some really good ones in this book called Searching for Shalom. And first of all, when we're trying our hardest to be love in action to all people, all natural disasters, it serves us well to remember that sometimes all we're asked to do is what? Begins with L. Listen. And love. Yeah, love begins with an L too. Love. Listen. Listen. So, listen to these words by Ann Weems called cold water, hot coffee. Sometimes that cup of cold water turns out to be a cup of hot coffee. And what we're asked to do is to pour it and to listen. Sometimes we Christians, in our enthusiasm, think we were asked to save the world, when what we were asked to do is to go into it and tell God's story to people in need of some good news. Anxious activists forget that just listening is an act of compassion. Driven disciples forget that just listening is an act of faithfulness. Guilty givers forget that just listening is an act of stewardship. Since we church people have a tendency to be driven and anxious and guilt-ridden, perhaps we should read the directions again and pour a cup of hot coffee and listen in God's name. That was kind of cool, huh? Yes. So love in action begins with listening, and sometimes, not always, it ends there too. Sometimes that's all we can do is listen. Taking up our cross and following Jesus seems like a really heavy task sometimes. Yet that day, Jesus told the disciples, whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. So we can ponder that one. What does losing our lives really mean? But surely part of it is taking some of the burden we feel off our shoulders and letting Jesus carry it. Hard to do, really hard to do. Paul says, be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. Except, if the Apostle Paul were sitting right here, I'd say, Paul, it's really hard to honor other people if we don't honor ourselves, right? In fact, it's just about impossible to honor other people if we're not honoring ourselves. We need to love ourselves, honor ourselves first in order to be wise and strong enough to honor others. That's what I say to Mr. Apostle Paul, sitting right there. So, I've got one more story about a man who honored himself and thus made life better for the people around him. So Diane shared the story with me. It was from Reader's Digest because I hope to go on El Camino, not the whole 500, 600 miles of El Camino de Santiago. Don was worried I was gonna leave and be gone for like 4 months, but no, I'm not. Just like 62 miles, which is 100K, which is the least that you can do and still get a certificate. So I hope to do this in June. But anyway, Diane shared the story with me about this gentleman who did this, who walked the trail. So his name is D.G. Marshall, and he had a problem of talking too much. He loved to talk, and talk, and not listen. And his family and his wife wanted to divorce him. His kids were fed up with him. His friends were fed up with him. So and he was miserable too. So he finally figured this all out and said, I'm going to take a 3-month sabbatical from the radio station where I work. He was a radio host. He went to France, because you could begin the trail in France. And he started walking, and he vowed not to talk for 3 months, the whole time, while walking 600 miles on El Camino. And he did it, and he finished the trail, and he learned a lot about himself in the process. He became less sarcastic, less angry, a little more able to see the preciousness in the people he loved the most, which fits right into another poem by Ann Weems that I'm going to close with. It's called My Church Family. Again, in honor of Joe. It's called My Church Family. Faces and words and glimpses of souls, one by one we come. We are many, and then one. Precious faces, tender words, sweet glimpses into souls. Just being here among you is a joy. Unending thank yous rise within me for these beloved ones within your church, O God. Blessed be their lives, blessed be your church. Amen.